The owner of a famous steakhouse goes undercover as a regular customer, but what he overhears at the register leaves him absolutely frozen. The rich aroma of sizzling steak filled the air as James Carter stepped into Carter's Prime Steakhouse, his own high-end restaurant that had become a local favorite. But tonight, no one recognized him. Dressed in a simple hoodie, worn-out jeans, and a faded baseball cap, he blended in as just another customer. He had built this place from the ground up, pouring his heart, soul, and millions into creating the perfect dining experience. But something had felt off lately. Bad reviews, declining customer visits, and a nagging feeling that something wasn't right. He needed to see for himself what was happening when the boss wasn't around. As he walked up to the counter, he noticed two cashiers. One, a young woman with tired eyes, nervously glancing over her shoulder. The other, a cocky young man smirking as he leaned lazily against the register. James pulled out his wallet, ready to place an order, when he heard something that made his blood run cold. I overcharged that last guy by 20 bucks. He didn't even notice. The young male cashier laughed, shoving a few extra bills into his pocket. The female cashier looked horrified. Jason, you can't do that. It's stealing, Jason scoffed. Relax, Olivia. It's not our money. The boss is some rich snob who probably doesn't even care. James clenched his jaw. He did care. More than they could ever imagine. And they had no idea the rich snob they were stealing from was standing right in front of them. James fought to keep his expression neutral, but inside, anger burned like a wildfire. He had worked too hard to let employees like Jason ruin his reputation and steal from customers. But rather than reveal himself immediately, he decided to observe, see just how deep the corruption ran. Taking a deep breath, he stepped forward and placed his order. I'll have the ribeye steak, medium rare. Jason barely glanced at him as he punched it into the system. That'll be $55. James raised an eyebrow. The ribeye was listed at $45 on the menu. He purposely didn't question it, instead sliding his credit card across the counter. As Jason swiped the card, he chuckled under his breath, muttering, "Another easy 10 bucks." James's grip tightened on the counter, but he forced himself to stay calm. Olivia, however, looked increasingly uncomfortable. Once the payment went through, Jason handed James his receipt without looking up. Take a seat, it'll be out soon. James took his receipt, but before walking away, he asked casually, You guys get a lot of complaints about pricing? Olivia flinched, but Jason only laughed. Nah, people are too dumb to notice. That was all James needed to hear. As he walked toward his table, his mind raced. If Jason was stealing right in front of another employee, how deep did this go? Was the manager aware? Worse, was the manager involved? Before he could think further, a couple entered the restaurant. James watched as they approached the counter, an older man and woman, both dressed modestly. The woman's eyes scanned the menu, but when she saw the prices, she hesitated. Excuse me, the older man said kindly. Do you offer any senior discounts? Jason smirked. No discounts here. Just order or move aside. The woman frowned. Oh, I see. Well, we were hoping to try the steak, but it's a little out of our budget. Jason rolled his eyes and muttered under his breath, Then go eat somewhere else. James's stomach twisted in disgust. Then Olivia did something unexpected. She quickly glanced at Jason, then at the older couple. Lowering her voice, she whispered, Come back in an hour. I'll make sure you get something. James's eyes narrowed. Was she stealing food too? Or was there something more to her kindness? One thing was certain. This restaurant had problems. And by the end of the night, everyone responsible would face the consequences. James sat at his table, his mind racing. He had built this steakhouse from the ground up, priding himself on quality food, fair prices, and excellent service. Yet, here he was, watching Jason pocket extra money and treat customers like they were beneath him. But Olivia, she was different. Her kindness toward the older couple hadn't gone unnoticed. Why was she risking her job to help them? Was she simply a good person, or was she covering for something else? As he pondered this, a waiter approached his table with his steak. James looked up to see a young man, barely in his 20s. balancing a tray with visible nervousness. "Here's your ribeye, sir," he said, setting the plate down carefully. James examined the steak. Overcooked. Instead of the juicy medium rare he had ordered, the meat was well done, dry, and barely seasoned. He glanced at the waiter's name tag. Ryan. "Ryan," James said evenly. "Is the chef new?" Ryan hesitated before answering. Uh, no, sir. Same chef?" James cut into the steak. The texture was tough, confirming his suspicion. They were cutting corners in the kitchen. He took a single bite. Bland. Frustrated, but keeping his composure, James asked, "Do you eat here often?" Ryan blinked in surprise. "Me? No, sir. The staff menu is different." That was another red flag. A good restaurant should never serve employees something worse than the customers. James leaned forward. "Tell me, Ryan, do customers ever complain about the food?" Ryan looked terrified. He swallowed hard before answering. I I shouldn't say." James kept his tone light. "Just curious. Off the record." Ryan hesitated, then finally whispered, "Yeah. A lot. That confirmed it." The food quality was dropping, employees were stealing, and customers were being overcharged. His own restaurant was failing right under his nose. And then, as James processed all of this, he saw something that made his blood boil. Jason was handing Olivia a wad of cash. She shook her head, looking distressed. "I told you, I don't want to cut." Jason smirked. "Relax, it's just a tip for keeping your mouth shut." James clenched his fists. That was it. The undercover act was over. It was time for everyone to learn who he really was. James pushed his chair back slowly, the legs scraping against the floor as he stood. His heart pounded, not out of anger, but from sheer disappointment. He had built this steakhouse from nothing. Every brick, every recipe, every policy had been designed with fairness and quality in mind. And yet, here he was, watching his own employees corrupt it. Jason was stealing. Olivia was being pressured. Ryan was terrified to speak up. James adjusted his sleeves and walked toward the counter. Jason, oblivious, continued counting the cash in his hands. "See, Olivia? Easy money. You just gotta keep my mouth shut." James's voice cut through the air like a blade. Jason's head snapped up, his smirk vanishing. Olivia's face paled. James reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek black card. "A VIP owner's card," Ryan gasped. Olivia covered her mouth. Jason, however, stared at it in disbelief. "No way," Jason scoffed, laughing nervously. "You're messing with me." James didn't blink. "Read the name." Jason hesitated, then his face lost all color. The card read, "James Carter, founder and CEO." The room fell silent. Customers turned to stare. Kitchen staff peeked from behind swinging doors. Even the older couple Olivia had helped earlier watched in shock. James leaned against the counter. His voice was calm, but sharp as a knife. "So," he said, glaring directly at Jason, "tell me again, how much were you overcharging customers?" Jason froze. His hands trembled as he shoved the stolen money behind the register. "Sir, I was just stealing," James finished for him. "Lying to customers? Pocketing cash from struggling families?" Jason opened his mouth, then closed it. James turned to Olivia. "And you?" Tears welled up in her eyes. "I never took his money. I swear. I didn't know how to report him without losing my job." James studied her. He believed her. She had been trying to do the right thing. But Jason? James exhaled sharply. "Get out!" Jason blinked. "What?" "You heard me." James' voice was like steel. "You're fired. Get out!" Jason panicked. "Wait, sir, please. I've been here for years. James turned to Ryan. "How long has he been doing this?" Ryan hesitated, then whispered, "At least a year." "A year." James shook his head. Unforgivable. Security approached. Jason tried to argue, but it was over. He was escorted out, humiliated. James then turned to Olivia and Ryan. "I need honesty," he sighed. "Is there anything else I should know?" Ryan gulped. Olivia hesitated, then finally nodded. "Sir, the food. The chef has been using cheaper ingredients. It's why the quality dropped. James closed his eyes for a moment. First corrupt staff, now dishonest cooking. He had to fix everything. He straightened and nodded. Thank you. You're both staying. Olivia gasped. Really? James smiled for the first time. Not just staying. You're getting promoted. Ryan and Olivia stared in shock. But James wasn't done. He turned to the stunned customers watching the scene unfold. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, tonight, dinner is on me. The restaurant erupted in cheers. Olivia wiped her tears, Ryan grinned, and Jason? He was gone. But James wasn't celebrating. His work had just begun.